Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. The day after the budget presentation, a beautiful Tuesday morning, Sean Michael Small here to, well, give my thoughts and views. Soon I'll be joined by my co-host. We'll have that discussion. I know some people might have seen us last year at the post-budget analysis on WESN. However, this year we thought we would reserve that for our show. And I'm sure a lot of you have gone through the news. A lot of you have taken out what's most important to you. And as I fear, there is a lot of things that people are going to be upset over. And I guess the real question for the government is there anybody that is satisfied with this budget? In some ways, there are certain things that I can't disagree with. I don't know if I could say that I'm satisfied. I don't know if this budget gives me the indicators that I would have liked to have that we are going in a good direction. With regards to some of the criticisms, I'll just say this. I could somewhat agree with the leader of the opposition when she says that the budget doesn't seem to have a direction or overall plan. I could somewhat agree to that. Because while I think there was a somewhat of a philosophy, I'm not sure if it was really executed in a complete manner. And rather, I think ultimately it was a case of, well, just trying to do a puzzle, not necessarily knowing how the puzzle is supposed to look. So I'm left wondering, how complete is this? Is this an incomplete puzzle? How many pieces are still missing in there? How many pieces were lost when they opened the box and it spilled all over the floor? So we have a couple of clips with regards to the presentation last night of the finance minister. First off, I would like to start off with the budget theme. Because, it was very, very quick. He didn't really elaborate on it, and he didn't necessarily tie things back into what he said in some of the opening minutes. Let's listen to what the finance minister had to say on the budget theme.
Our 2023 budget is designed to build on our resilience and facilitate a broad-based revival of the economy. It will encompass all sectors and all segments of the economy. It will strengthen business continuity and growth and drive our digitization program while assisting the poor and vulnerable. We have been steadfast and resolute in adhering to the principles set out in our public policy agenda. My fiscal 2023 budget theme, therefore, is tenacity and stability in the face of global challenges.
In the face of global challenges. Now, it seems somewhat obvious, right? But then further on in its preamble, and there was a lot of preamble in this budget presentation. 4 hours. I cannot give the correct, I cannot use the correct words to express my distaste of a 4-hour presentation. I understand it's the budget. I understand the Secretary of Finance, who is also Chief Secretary, took 3.5 hours. I don't know why does it have to be that long. But before we get into the meat of what was said, I'd just like to remind our viewers on the government stance on GDP, nominal GDP, and the increases that are used to tout the successes currently of how their budgets previously have been performing. Let's take a look at this clip about nominal GDP increase.
It is noteworthy that our nominal GDP has grown by 34% since 2020, from 142 billion in 2020 to an estimated 190 billion in 2022. Our per capita GDP has increased from US 15,000 in September 2020 to US 19,500 in September 2022, and is now among the highest in the region. And it should be noted that our per capita GDP is higher now than it was in 2015, 7 years ago. Our nominal GDP is the highest it has been since we became an independent country in 1962, 60 years ago. The adjusted general government debt to GDP ratio has decreased from 81% in 2020 to a projected 70% in 2022, now among the lowest in the region.
The highest nominal GDP we have ever seen as a nation. Sounds good, sounds great. Problem is, I'm not an economist, so maybe I'm getting it wrong, but I do believe nominal GDP does not account for inflation. That would be real GDP. Maybe I'm mixing it up. Because the reason why I believe that is to be the case is that inflation can account for a lot of our gains. That's the thing, right? At the end of the day, GDP is measured in dollars, and when we have inflation, well, the amount of dollars used, the value, the dollar value, it's actually going to go up just because of inflation. We could shrink, and GDP unadjusted for inflation could still potentially go up. Have we seen real growth to say that the path we've been on is successful? That's hard to say because we don't get enough information from the government. The problem is now, because this is one of the first statements, this is within the first half an hour. If you say smart manisms like that, all of the justification that comes after now has questions. Not saying that they're wrong, not saying that they're lies, not saying that they're false. They have questions. Because it's true. It can be true that nominal GDP is grown to a significant figure higher than we've ever had it before. What have you? It could be the highest nominal GDP in the world. That does not in and of itself mean anything good unless you factor in other things. And right now, the same inflation that's making our GDP look great, when you don't factor it out, that inflation is what's causing a lot of the hardship for the people who are looking to the budget with regards to trying to see how are we moving forward. I have to admit, I don't think that there's a lot to indicate in these harsh economic times what exactly the next year is going to look like for the people who are already on the margins. But now let's look at the big picture. Let's look at what the minister did for allocations. And then I can get into why I'm not necessarily completely sold on this. Let's get into the allocations from the Minister of Finance.
With revenues of $56.175 billion, an expenditure of $57.65 billion, if all goes according to plan, our fiscal accounts in 2023 will be close to balance with a deficit of $1.51 billion, or 0.8% of GDP. Without taking account of loan financing through state enterprises, such as the $250 million for road repairs and rehabilitation to be done by Pure, $1.5 billion for the HTC, and special allocations such as the $300 million stimulus package for agriculture, which are placed in the Ministry of Finance for disbursement, the major fiscal 2023 allocations will be for education and training, $7.453 billion. For health, $6.892 billion. For national security, $5.798 billion. For social grants in 2023, we will be spending $5.453 billion. Works and transport, $3.748 billion. Public utilities, $2.823 billion. Rural development and local government, $1.887 billion. Agriculture, $1.330 billion. Housing, $0.974 billion. Further, to create employment, drive development, and stimulate economic activity, the Public Sector Investment Program in fiscal 2023 has been increased to $6.2 billion, $2 billion more than fiscal 22. And while increasing investment in the development program in 2023, we will continue to pursue our fiscal consolidation objective, which would ultimately lead to reasonable fiscal and debt sustainability.
Agriculture gets $1 billion. Housing gets almost $1 billion. Now, education, yes. Health, some of these things, they just need the money to keep afloat. To what extent are we going to have the issues with our education system fixed? To what extent can the issues of our national security, but really and truly crime, be fixed? One of the things that stood out to me was that the finance minister was talking about army bases, more money spent with regards to the defense force. The defense force is not primary with regards to fighting crime. And I'm pretty sure we're not at risk of invasion. Maybe in these times, I need to rethink that assumption. But really and truly, the main thing about crime is the detection rates, is the prosecution, and the cases of getting people successfully prosecuted, successfully convicted. Those are the problems we have. This budget figure of $5 billion, okay, it maintains what we have. Border security is a big issue, which Finance Minister acknowledged with a line. But right now, the violence is a major issue. I know that the private sector, one of the heads of the chambers, was hoping more money to be allocated to national security. Some of these allocations, fine. They are what they are, they need to be maintained. Agriculture getting $1 billion, that was somewhat of a disappointment to me. And there's further things in the budget that were a disappointment to me. The finance minister and then the prime minister, I believe, afterwards, I could be wrong. I did not necessarily watch through his press conference after watching a 4-hour budget presentation. I found it was somewhat interesting, an interesting choice to communicate that way. But the finance minister did go through great pains to say that we can't abandon oil and gas. So as much as we want to diversify, this is our short to medium term future. I agree with that, but I'm not entirely sure if we really are committed to even start diversification. Will this $1 billion be spent wisely? Maybe it will, maybe it won't. Because right now, the problem with agriculture, with tourism, and a whole host of other things is the lack of infrastructure, the unease of doing business, the lack of a market, the lack of any sort of industry-wide policy or plan. This morning, I heard just a snippet of an exchange on another morning show with a minister who, out of respect for his father, I wouldn't necessarily name and try to be too hard on him. But at the end of the day, it seems as though the things that he had to say proved the point that I and others around me have theorized quite often these last couple of years, that the government really does not understand business. So then, for them to carry out the functions you need a government to do to support the private sector, it's not to replace, it's not to give out money, it's not to give out grants and loans, although that seems to be the first thing they look to do. But it's about providing certain functions that the sector cannot necessarily provide for itself, particularly when it's in its infancy, as well as the fact that certain policies that are needed, that the government has total control of, such as labor laws, such as government hiring practices, when the state is one of the largest employers in the country, there is very little incentive for people to work in the private sector. Therein lies all of the advantage. We didn't necessarily hear about that, although that might not be within the scope of the budget. So I don't know if some of the sectors that we needed got the money that was necessary. There were some things that I did like. There were some signs of capital expenditure, but we have to take a break. When we come back, I'll get further into that. There's a lot technically of this budget, 4 hours to unpack. So it'll probably be the next few days that we'll be going over all the details. But we continue that conversation when we return on Talking Points on WESN, your content capital. Sean Michael Small. I will see you after this.
Delivered nationwide. Kiss Enriched Bread.
Fill your day with love.
With society plagued by a host of issues, with debates surrounding our urgent concerns falling short, with questions of our future not always being answered,
the conversation continues. Join me, Kemuel Pascal, as the voice of the youth comes to life. We will confront the controversial topics of today's world to gain answers that are key for a better tomorrow. One and One with me, Kemuel Pascal. Wednesdays at 10 a.m. Only on WESN, Content Capital.
The best laptops and tablets are at dbesttoys.com. Get a Gateway 14.1-inch Ultra Slim notebook or an HP 14-inch laptop at the best prices in TNT. Get the Fire 7 tablet for $474. You can also shop the latest Amazon Fire Sticks. Call now at 32-DBEST to order or visit us in-store at Forces flagship MacBean. Shop online now at dbesttoys.com. Free delivery available throughout Trinidad and Tobago. Cash or links on delivery.
Let your voice be heard. Call Madam Fix-It on WESN, the only place that effectively helps you with your woes. Having problems getting onto government agencies, water woes, NIS and pension problems, potholes, and much, much more. Call me, Madam Fix-It, every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, right here on WESN. Let me fix it for you.
As a fiscal stimulus to the economy and a fillip to the retail sector, we are providing relief to working families by increasing the personal income tax exemption limit from $84,000 to $90,000 per year. All individuals earning $7,500 a month or less will now be exempt from income tax.
So, in a way, good news, because this is the government giving up some money. this is the problem with the budget, right? Everybody wants more money. Everybody wants to pay less money. Everybody wants to see more money that the things they want or they need or at least they think they need. And everybody wants to see less expenses to get those things. That's the balancing act. Was the government successful? Maybe. I think that as much as there was approximately 3 to 3.5 hours of context and lead up, I'm not entirely sure how effective it was, particularly since it was so disjointed. And maybe that's where I'll give the opposition some points. The presentation was disjointed. For all we know, the budget could be quite well thought out and put together. We would have no idea because the presentation was a bit of a mess. But with that said, that was one area where people at the lower end of the economic bracket could feel a little bit of relief. I have no problem with this. The flip side is there's another area where they might feel a bit of the strain. Fuel prices. A bit controversial because we already had, well, we were already given the warnings and we already had price increases on this matter. And now, as of today, well, I will let the finance minister speak for himself. Let's take a look at the clip where he went into the fuel prices rising.
An oil price of US 90 per barrel, the cost to government, if the current prices are left unchanged, would be $1.9 billion. We are firm in our view that this level of expenditure on fuel is not productive and that taxpayers' money could be better spent elsewhere. We believe, therefore, that it is only reasonable that the money spent on subsidizing fuel is capped at $1 billion per year. We are of the firm view that another increase in fuel prices is regrettably required. We have therefore decided to increase, as of today, the prices of premium and super gasoline and kerosene by $1 per litre and diesel by 50 cents a litre. The new prices will be premium gasoline, $7.75 a litre, super gasoline, $6.97 a litre, diesel, $4.41 a litre, kerosene, $4.50 a litre. The cost of LPG will remain fixed at $21 for a 20-pound cylinder of cooking gas for domestic customers, which will require the government to pay an annual subsidy for cooking gas of $300 million. It should be noted that at these new fuel prices, if oil prices average US $95 per barrel for fiscal 2023, the government will still be required to spend $1.45 billion to subsidize the price of fuel. And if oil prices average US $90 per barrel in 2023, we will still have to spend $1.2 billion subsidizing fuel. To alleviate the effect of these increases in the price of fuel on the most vulnerable in our society, we shall in 2023 give all recipients of social grants, namely recipients of public assistance, disability, food support, and senior citizens pension, a one-time transport grant of $1,000.
It went up as of today. Everything else was January the 1st, I believe. I could be wrong, but almost everything else was January 1st, except for this. This is today. Now I understand. Before I introduce my guest, let me just make my position clear one time. This spreads out the burden, and the government is still paying over $1 billion in subsidies, potentially, if the price of gas holds. Is this the best way to do it? Maybe. I think if, as the minister said, if they allow the market prices to take over, it might be even worse. The question is, what are they doing with the money that would have gone to the subsidy? Are we going to see now the real management with whatever savings they found? So, with that said, I am joined by my guest this morning. He is the MP of Mayaro, as well as, I believe, the Shadow Minister of Public Utilities. He is MP Parry. Good morning, MP.
Hi, good morning. Good morning. Thank you for having me.
So, first of all, just want to ask your initial reaction to this budget before we get into discussion and I influence you with my opinions. What did you think about it?
Okay, so first of all, I am the opposition spokesperson for trade and industry, and I speak on matters of finance and the economy as well. So it's not public utilities, just to clear that one up, right? In terms of the budget, definitely, the country held its breath, hoping that the minister would have come with a comprehensive package to deal with the serious issues that is affecting the country of the day. Issues like the spiraling crime rate, diversification away from the energy sector, this massive joblessness that we seem to be grappling with, the crumbling of the small and medium-sized business sector over the last 2 years. You have the high cost of living, which we are grappling with as well. Then on some infrastructural matters, the country has been grappling with flooding, drainage issues, the collapse of your road network in South Trinidad, Central Trinidad, and come back to the issue of the fuel costs. What has the government done in terms of policy to mitigate or to soften the blow for citizens with this rise in fuel costs? So those are the things I thought that the minister should have come with as a very holistic approach in delivering a budget. So whatever strategy, plans, and so on the government should have spoken to those main items, and then you take it let the technocrats deal with it from a point-by-point basis over a period of time to deal with those matters. Sorry, that was not the case. It was just another repeat of budget farce. 60%, 70% of the budget was repeating things that he would have said in the past. There was very little new, very little things to the country to be hopeful about.
So now I understand you have concerns, if you're still with me, with regards to helping people, especially with some of the specific challenges like local government. I found that, and it's very interesting with regards to the allocation to some of these ministries. It's kind of difficult. Education is so large and yet it seems to still be underfunded. What do we do there? Social grants is so large. Is that necessarily the best way to do things? Because there's the old saying of, if you give a man a fish, that's one thing, but you need to teach a man to fish to feed him for a lifetime. Are we getting the long-term benefits out of this budget? Was there anything you think in this budget, as much as you're saying that most of it was the same old story, and we've seen the results of that, we're living it right now. Was there anything to say that in the long run, that we're setting up something to try to make things better, or is it really just we're on the exact same course despite the new challenges that we face that we've never faced before?
Now, the minister addressed certain issues in terms of the energy sector with regards to supplemental tax on fiscal incentives to increase exploration and so on in the marine areas and some land. But remember, the horizon for those things are 3 to 5 to 7 years. We needed more incentives to get investments in the non-energy sector, in terms of fintech, ICT, greenfield type of opportunities where the investments will bring a faster return to the country. So he did touch on some of those areas. He did touch on some interesting credits for the small and medium-sized enterprises. Mm-hmm. But when I joined earlier on, you were speaking about the ease of doing business as well. Nothing in this budget spoke to the improving the ease of doing business. We want to do more international business. We want to get more foreign companies to spend money here. But it can't take you 3 months to get an electricity connection. It can't take you 9 months to get a water connection. You can't take 2 years to sign off on a contractual agreement. For instance, you have so much issues on the ports with delays, customs and excise, entries. Those are simple things that the minister could have addressed in terms of helping with the ease of doing business. None of those things were addressed. So I mean, the government is like a broken clock. At least they write twice for the day. But most of the measures outlined in the budget was really repeat and rehash. I mean, if I go to just give you an example, since I shadowed trade and industry, special economic zone was mentioned in 2016, 2017, 2020, 2021, 2022. Supporting small and medium enterprises, 2016, 17, 18, 20, 21, 22. Export promotion, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22. He's just repeating all of these things and we're getting nowhere. And that is a sad fact, taking into consideration that, we are at a we're at the edge of a precipice and some hard decision needed to be taken. Some good thinking, some innovative policies needed to be driven, and he delivered none of that yesterday.
Do you think that he should have had a harder budget with more, something similar to the austerity measures that we've seen in the days of the NAR? Should it have been more aggressive in that approach? Or because the only thing that I have with this budget, I knew that it wasn't going to be easy. Not that I'm saying that I approve of the result, but I knew that if you want to put more money somewhere, you have to take it from somewhere else. So should he have been more aggressive in his approach with regards to the ongoing spending to try to get more capital expenditure going?
No. At the end of the day, the function of a government really is to look after the most vulnerable in the society as well. Austerity measures is something that, it is your last option when all else fails. So let me give you a little example. In 2016, when the minister first announced that there is the intention of his government to remove the fuel subsidy, that's 2016, he indicated that it would have been gradual over the next few years. It was speeded up because of the Ukraine conflict, the price of oil and so on. So we got to the point where they put a cap on it today. So the question I would ask, right, is since 2016, as a government, they knew that they're going to move this cap of fuel cost is going to go up. It means they're going to take more disposable income away from the average citizen. What did your government do to improve the road network so it will have a lower maintenance cost on your vehicles?
Yeah.
2, what did your government do to improve public transport so citizens could have had a cheaper alternative and park their car home and only use it on weekend to go to the beach? So nothing was done. So rather than, as you asked, should there have been stronger measures? No. There should have been smarter measures years ago. We're talking about food prices, imported inflation. For the last 2 years, I've been begging the government, the Minister of Trade, let us adopt the Guyanese approach, especially what you call the CIF charges. A container pre-COVID used to cost $3,000 to land in Trinidad and Tobago. Today, that very same container is costing about $20,000. The government is charging a CIF tax on that $20,000. We said, look, can you charge the pre-COVID rate? So it means that you take a 10 or 12% of the cost of the product to the consumer by the time it's in the market. So there are creative things, creative ways that the government could have softened the blow, but they've done nothing for the last 2 years. And those were just 2 examples that I gave you that the government could have taken the approach in order to not have to make austerity measures this year or over the next year or 2 coming. And I hope that answered your question in terms of what could have been done.
Well, there's more to this discussion because the irony is in the last budget, I did say what more was being done in case we have another external shock against us. And then we got it. And I guess that might be one of my concerns moving forward. But we have to take a break. Let's take a pin in that before we get down this long, winding road of austerity measures. When we return, we'll be joined by my co-host, Mr. Keaton Shah, and we'll continue the discussion with MP Parry, Shadow Minister of Trade and Industry. I got it right this time. Stay tuned. This is Talking Point on WESN. We'll be right back.
I am Rondell Donowa, attorney at law and host of Strictly Legal on WESN Content Capital. Strictly Legal is a legal program geared towards informing you, the public, of your legal rights, responsibilities, and remedies. So be viewing Thursdays 10 a.m. to 10:30 a.m.
FanZone, your reliable, authentic supplier, has just gotten better. You can now visit our website www.fanzonett.com for your authentic wear and collectibles. The only place where you can use both your Visa debit and credit cards. Visit our website fanzonett.com to make your purchase today.
Prime on WESN, the only place from 6 to 7:30 a.m. where you can get the most analytical and thorough interviews and regional reports.
The Barbados Labour Party, led by the Prime Minister Mia Motley, once again able to achieve a clean sweep in yesterday's general election.
I think a lot of people have underestimated the power of Tobago nationalism.
If the government is afraid to say it, I, Martin George, I am saying it this morning on your show, Andy. There will be no carnival before Ash Wednesday.
Grab a cup of coffee and start your day right watching AM Prime with Andy Johnson weekdays from 6 a.m. Only on your content capital, WESN.
Welcome back to Talking Point, and as promised, I am joined by my co-host, Mr. Keaton Shah, who has not yet weighed in at all on the budget, but, you know, time is a factor.
No, that's absolutely fine. I think we should continue with the conversation because I was following it up there. First of all, good morning to all our viewers. I do apologize for my absence. I lay the sole blame on the Water and Sewerage Authority this morning because this day does not fall into the water schedule that we were told about. And I woke up with absolutely no water. So I apologize, but I'm glad to be here and joined by the Shadow Minister of Trade and Industry, MP Rushton Parry. Good morning, sir.
Hi, good morning, Keaton. Good morning.
Well, I was following the conversation off air, and I just want to briefly comment before we continue that I think I agree, because I didn't hear many commentators express it, and off air, I think you mentioned it, that the Minister of Finance himself, Colm Imbert, he seemed like he was not impressed with his own budget. You're absolutely right in suggesting that he's always animated. The only time he seemed very animated is when he was asking the Speaker of the House about the opposition members making noise. That was the only time. But he didn't seem enthusiastic. He seemed as though he himself felt a bit depressed, like he didn't know what to say next or what to do next, or as if this was his very final budget speech that he was reading. That's what it came across to me.
I think...
Go ahead, MP. Go ahead. Sorry.
Well...
Yeah. I mean, as I was mentioning, when you are delivering an address, you must be convinced in your own mind that this is what I want. But if you, I mean, we look at budgets year after year, and we look for similarities, right? This 2023 budget was a cut and paste. The structure, the language, it was like his technocrats cut and paste pieces of last year's budgets. They put one or two pieces inside there, and he was not convinced himself. Mm-hmm. He got animated, you know when he talked about the fuel prices in the end. But other than that, it was subdued. And it tells me something that when you are leading an organization and you are not convinced on what you are doing is the right thing, well, then we're in some problems. And when you have these matters, as I mentioned to your host earlier on, the budget ought to have spoken to the issues of the day. And the issues of the day are how do we create jobs? How do we deal with the escalating crime rate? How do we deal with the non-energy sector diversification? How do we deal with drainage? Because half of the country every other day is underwater. How are we dealing with our massive infrastructural collapsing of roads? You know, and none of those things were addressed in any strategic way with clear timelines and objectives. And I'll give you another example as well. We're talking about green renewable energy. We have CNG. Why haven't in this budget the minister make a statement and say, look, I am going to give you 3 years until 2024 or 2025 that all government vehicles should be converted to CNG or should be electric, you know, in terms of dealing with our carbon footprint. Why didn't you say for the rise in fuel costs, I am going to instruct public service within 18 or 24 months, I want 40% of the employees to work from home. Get your work from home policy, get your unions involved. You know, see who needs technology equipment, what parts of the country need high-speed broadband, and you ask public sector to do the same. These are philosophical underpinnings that when you are designing a system of governance, you must be clear, you must be certain, and you must set timelines to meet your objectives. You just have to listen Mia Motley. You listen Mia Motley when she is speaking, and you will see the difference in language and purpose. And I think the country held its breath yesterday. I am telling you, I held my breath yesterday as an opposition MP because I said, you know, Minister Imbut is not a stupid guy. He is a very intelligent man, and he must feel the pulse of this country. And he knows he's coming with a fuel increase. He knows he's going to come with a few other items. How do I set a different standard? So it injects confidence. And there's another thing. Did the budget yesterday instill confidence in the private sector? Because I always believe that if we cannot incentivize the private sector to take that $10 or $12 billion in cash that is sitting in commercial banks out into the money system, into investments to create jobs, well, then the state cannot push the growth of the country alone. It must be private sector, but there's no confidence. The Prime Minister doesn't give confidence. The Minister of Finance doesn't give confidence. And let's not talk about the view of the foreign investor. I like to give this example. We have one of the safest, best ports in the country, and that's in Chaguaramas for our yachting industry and so on, right? But yet, the largest shipbuilder in the world passed Trinidad and Tobago straight and went to Guyana. Why? It is because we do not instill the confidence anymore in foreign investors. We have capital flight, that's a huge problem. The issue of Forex, that's a huge problem. And nothing in this budget set a target and a tone that these things will be dealt with in the coming months or the coming years by this government. And that is the sad state of affairs in Trinidad and Tobago.
I mean, with regards to the private sector, I heard something this morning that indicated to me, at least with regards to tourism, the government seems to somewhat miss the boat and is expecting the private sector to pick up the slack and do things. Some of these functions can't be done by the private sector, it has to be done by the government.
What's interesting on that point, Sean, is that you hear from the government all the time that the private sector has to play its role. The private sector has to play its part. But the
role.
Exactly, but the government is too involved in the economy of Trinidad and Tobago, too involved in doing business in Trinidad and Tobago. So in a sense, you're trying to...
affects the labour market.
You're strangling the private sector whilst at the same time trying to champion them.
But just one of the things, just a comment with regards to your observations, both of your observations, I think maybe that the reason why he was animated in limited areas, particularly about the fuel price increase, is because that might be where that was a proactive decision by him and Cabinet. Whereas the rest of it, I think, MP, you're right. Maybe it was a lot of cut and paste by the technocrats. I'm wondering if the finance minister even knew the contents beforehand, because to me, some of these things, it was like if he was reading it for the first time. One of the reasons why I say that is because, yeah, with regards to the digitization, because he mentioned it in a few areas, I believe, with regards to, I'm not sure if it was with the policing, but with the public sector. He was using terms and phrases and a platform for new e-commerce and stuff. It was very much just a lot of buzzwords. Didn't mean a lot. And I don't know why some of the things he mentioned in the budget was necessary, because there is a platform for people to do business online already. That's free. It's called Facebook. It's called Instagram. It's called whatever social media platform that they use to market themselves. We don't need the government to reinvent the wheel there. We need specific things that the government could only do for us. Facebook can't improve ease of doing business in TNT. So, but I do want to ask you something, because with regards to the private sector, customs duties, and the time it takes to clear packages, the efficiency of the processes and the ports, I think that's something that we talked about off air, MP Parry, that we didn't hear necessarily anything in the budget. And if they're serious about the private sector, this is something that impacts almost every private business, because we import almost everything.
Well, there is a massive shortage of staffing at Customs and Excise. In 2020, somewhere in 2020, I think the number was like around 200 officers short. Now, what it means is that Customs and Excise have to get very creative on how do we clear package, how do we clear containers, how do we clear, how do we handle entries. Now, again, the budget statement may not get into the nitty-gritty of the activities of Customs and Excise, but the acting chief of Customs and Excise a couple months ago was in the newspaper crying about the inefficiencies on the port, scanning equipment that is not working, the delays to clear containers. Right now, you have pharmaceutical suppliers can't supply pharmaceuticals because containers are sitting on the docks 3 months. Now, every year in the budget, we invest money in something called Asecuda. There's a line item. We spend 10 million, 12 million, single electronic window, SEW. We have $8 million allocated for that as well. Why aren't these tools helping to move containers into the system faster? There are risk management modules in these items that you can clear containers, allow containers to pass you without 100% physical inspection. Then you have the issues of entries. Why it is every single entry, if I bring in a package on Amazon that has cost me $150, the cost for a customs officer to create an entry in terms of labor and time, which makes absolute packages under 20,000 TT dollars, it should require no entry. No entry, absolutely. So it's no paperwork has to file, and you let the package go through, you pay the customs duty on the price of it. They're also asking to have something called a de minimis, where any package that is under $400 US, no duties and excise. Now, what this does, it frees up the manpower in Customs and Excise to deal with the larger package, the containers, the clearing of shipments on the port, which brings in more revenue to the state, rather than the manpower is being used in fine items that not bringing any kind of revenue of substance to the state. But again, this requires creative thinking. It requires a holistic approach on how are we going to deliver? The world is moving what you call just in time. Nobody's storing parts and so on. So, I mean, I run an IT company, and if a server goes down tonight for one of my clients, within 24 hours, Dell is willing to ship spares. But from the time it hit customs in Trinidad, it takes 2 weeks to clear. Look at the manpower cost to have that server down. The services that will not be available. Who pays for that? And we cannot be in a competitive environment globally. If a foreign investor who's here and a valve or a gauge on a piece of equipment in a chemical plant goes down and we can't get a replacement between 24 or 48 hours because of delays on our ports, in our customs and excise and so on. These are the things that we must address. And it must be identified holistically in any kind of planning. And that is not happening. And that has been the modus operandi of this government for the last 7 years. When you take a manifesto, a political manifesto, which is a list of things to do, and you convert it into government policy, there's no platform, there's no philosophical underpinning. What are we going to do for rural development? What's the target for education? How are we going to deal with this 35% of students who couldn't score more than 30% in terms of the SEA exam? Nothing holistic is being done, and I don't know if our public servants are just frustrated and they refuse to even advise the ministers of government, but something is wrong. And let me tell you, I think this country, we are on the verge of anarchy, and I mean, I'm sorry to say it like that. You have flooding Monday morning, and then you have no waters in the tap by Tuesday night. How can our citizens, accept those kind of things? And it's just piling on the government. It's piling and piling and piling. And when you hear ministers of government come on television, they gaslight you and tell you everything is good. The economy is doing well. And I'm asking, where is the proof? Go on the streets and ask people.
Well, MP Parry, with about 3 minutes left, you say go on the streets and ask the people. What's interesting is you said ministers tend to gaslight the public. I followed all panels last night. WSN's panel had me glued at many a point. And then when I went to my decided to review some, and I saw that the Minister of Public Utilities and the Attorney General both stated, listen, this budget is going to bring, they admitted discomfort to the population. They admitted it. So here in Trinidad and Tobago, when we're seeing that the government has basically covered recurrent expenditure, I'm not seeing anything in terms of investments or generating revenue other than oil and gas, even though the minister said that we are looking at other sectors as well. Generally, the population is frustrated. They're tired. They are struggling to survive on a daily basis. The Prime Minister criticized people in terms of purchasing cars, when all of his ministers purchase cars that are very much heavily consuming gasoline across the nation, so it was kind of ironic. What's the solution? How is it that we now inspire the population to carry on? Many people would have woken up this morning and said, you know what, I'm done. I'm tired. I can't do this. How do you now push them out of that mindset and say, listen, we have to continue working. We have to continue pushing through, because we're not going to get anywhere if we as a population sit still. MP Parry?
I'll tell you this, right? Human beings, we don't like big changes, right? By nature. We hate big changes, right? And more so for Trinidadians. We hate change. We like to hug and kiss, but we hate change. But rather than put 5 big changes, let's do 100 small changes. 100 small changes, perhaps of insignificance to the masses. And it's like ants. You see a line of ants and you rest a stone in front of the ants. The ants just veers away from it and continue. So again, you need governments who are inspirational. Let's forget government. You need leaders. You need leaders who are inspirational and innovative. And they know when things are hard and they're willing to come and hold your hands and walk you through it. You can't bully people in this country. You cannot bully people into accepting that things are going to be hard, or they tighten all your belt. I mean, come on, man. You have to get out there. And you need to say, look, you see that $1 billion in fuel subsidy that we've taken? I am going to say, I'm going to make a commitment in 24 months. We're going to fix 1,000 landslips. We're going to fix 2,000 miles or kilometers of roadway with that $1 billion. And we will hold you to it. In that way, the country understands, because, I mean, we're watching the news, we're seeing what's happening all over the world. But if you're asking us to make certain sacrifices, because that subsidy money is our money, we have borrowed that money. That's the patrimony of the people of Trinidad and Tobago. But as a government, you say, listen, if I'm going to hold back $1 billion, I am going to put it somewhere, and I'm going to give you a target, and you can hold me to it. I think those are the kind of things that leaders and governments ought to be able to help, get people, hold their hands and walk them through this very, very difficult time. And as I said, as parliamentarians, as members of parliament, every time we open our mouth, it must be to inspire people, to give them a sense of hope, to give them a sense of, look, we will walk this thing, we will get there. It's going to be tough, but listen, we are going to put mitigations in place for it. But nothing comes from this government in that. It is really a bully approach. And, they riot yet. And who is this they? That is one of the most insulting comments that a government minister could ever make. The people who are right with and he said they right with, that the people who can't afford fuel in their vehicle. You understand? The most vulnerable in this country. And I think the government and this minister, they are going to pay the price politically for that one day soon for using that particular comment, because you can't rub it in people's faces that they riot yet. You know, and I mean, I'd like to close like that and say we remain hopeful that, you know, at some point in time, the country will get wiser, and if the people who they have put to administer the affairs, they can't do the job, you send them home and you give somebody else a chance. And that's it for me.
Well, MP Russian Parry, Shadow Minister of Trade and Industry, thank you very much for joining us this morning on Talking Point. And you're absolutely right, we'll just continue living with hope. But for now, that's where we'll have to conclude. Thank you, sir, and all the best.
My pleasure. Take care.
Well, Sean Michael Small, there's a lot more to unpack, and we will do so for the rest of the week.
Yeah, I mean, we didn't even get through with the THA allocation. There's a lot of details. I wasn't able to go into all of the details. I mean, there's so much details, it's hard to wrap your head around all of it. There will be some people who are happy for some of the budget, right? And I accept that. However, yeah, I do wish, maybe I'm radical. Maybe even more radical than MP Padre there with what I was hoping to see.
Well, I think in our position we could afford to be a bit more radical in terms of what we see. But folks, let's break for news on the hour. We're a bit overdue on that and we apologize, but we'll be right back after this.
Here's your WESN News on the Hour. I am Denise St. Clair. Thanks for joining us. Here are the headlines. Body of missing woman found. Tobago Chamber responds to budget. Government allocates $200 million to new road repair company. And internationally, 5 dead as typhoon hits Philippines. Now for the details. The body of Marissa Edwards, the woman who went missing since September 19th, has been found. The Hunters Search and Rescue Team, led by Captain Valence Rambarat and family members of Marissa Edwards, located her body at 5:45 p.m. on Monday. This comes just one day after the man who was identified as her fiancé was found hanging from a tree in Tabakit. Police believe the man killed Marissa, then committed suicide. Tobago Business Chamber head Martin George says the budget shows no clear growth path for Tobago's fiscal independence.
This appears to be much more of the same, and we appear to be going nowhere fast in terms of the way this budget is presented, in that it presents no clear plan to the best of our ability that we can see or discern from it. It presents no clear plan for economic growth and infrastructural development upon which Tobago can build and find its way towards self-sustainability and economic independence.
Finance Minister Carl Members says $200 million in total has been allocated to the new road repair company. This was revealed in his budget presentation yesterday.
A new state company, Secondary Road Rehabilitation and Improvement Company Limited, has been capitalized with an initial $100 million and a board appointed. A further $100 million has been allocated for this company in 2023, making a total of $200 million immediately available for repair of secondary roads.
The finance minister also announced that the country is on track to collect property tax beginning in 2023.
We are on track, Madam Speaker, to commence collection of property tax in fiscal 2023. The legal structure is already in place, but we intend to make some simple amendments before the end of the year to the Valuation of Land Act to tighten and clarify the procedures for the gathering and processing of information and the valuation of properties. Let me share with you some aspects of the work in progress. Upon population revaluation rules, the Board of Inland Revenue will commence the assessment and collection of property tax, starting with residential properties.
In international news now, 5 rescue workers in the Philippines have been killed in a typhoon that has left homes flooded and millions without electricity. They were washed away in flash floods while carrying out operations in the district of San Miguel, north of the capital, Manila. The district was among those hit hard by Typhoon Noru, with some residents seen stranded on their roofs, while others waded through chest-high garbage-strewn waters, attempting to pass on supplies. Well, that was your news to the hour on WESN. I am Denise St. Clair. Thanks for watching.
Welcome back to Talking Point here on WESN Content Capital. My co-host and colleague, Mr. Sean Michael Small, has departed for this morning's edition of the program as he has a personal matter to deal with. But thank you very much for sticking with us, and thank you very much to Sean for covering the first half of the program. So I'll be with you until the 9:30 a.m. mark, and I welcome you to have a conversation with me. Share with me your thoughts and opinions, because as you just heard from the Member of Parliament from Miaro and the Shadow Minister of Trade and Industry, Rushton Parry, well, we need to hear from the citizens and exactly what they're feeling. Though we have an idea, it seems as though the government is out of touch with what's taking place on the ground. So the phone lines are open, the numbers are on your screen. Call in and join me on Talking Point this morning. I know that the professor might certainly have a few comments as it relates to revenue generation and probably the collection of revenue generated through tax. That was a big talking point during the budget yesterday in relation to certain taxes such as the SPT as well as income tax and other business tax. But the Minister of Finance, interestingly, his preamble was the majority of his presentation. Just about 4 hours. His preamble was probably about 3 hours and 20 minutes, probably more. But if you listen to him, he covered a variety of things and without actually addressing the issues at core. And that is why I have a problem with this budget in particular, because even though the arguments of the deficit being the lowest, or one of the lowest that we've seen in recent history, it inspires no confidence in the economy in terms of what we're doing next for our income. We've once more banked on oil and gas, and nothing is wrong with that for years to come. But we have again deprived other sectors and deprived Trinidad and Tobago of other opportunities. That's just the genesis of my opinion. But I have a caller on there with me from Point Fortin. Good morning, caller.
Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning.
Could you tell me if there's any country anywhere where everything that they want to get?
No, you can't get what you want to get in every country.
You know what, I mean, I listened to you guys this morning, and I found you throw cold water and everything. You know there's a budget debate to come, right?
Yes.
There's a budget debate to come, and more details will be given when that time comes. That's
okay.
My contribution.
Thank you very much, caller. Caller, you're certainly entitled to your opinion, and I very much respect it. But with a 4-hour budget presentation, the mere fact that I have to wait for the debate for more details to come, and I can promise you that more details will not come. What we saw yesterday is just going to be justified without giving any sort of information or educating the public. So if I threw cold water into it, my co-host and colleague did, then quite frankly, I would have appreciated if your contribution to the discussion would be why it is that you feel a lot more positive than we do. Because we are looking for positive notes. Caller on the line with us from Miaro. Good morning, caller.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning.
It's a beautiful day to have a good day. And I would just want to say to you, Mr. Keaton, is that we have
serious issue when it comes to food, and our food is essential to our growth and development in this country. And we had a big expo showing how much things we could produce, but where do we get the material from? How do we go this forward when the budget is added at $300 million more, but the framework of the government sits on their butt? And now yesterday the leader is saying that the private sector is in charge of agriculture. You believe that, Mr. Keaton? That is why I puzzled all the years of my life, because I thought it was different. So all this government institute were helping and saying about farmers and for agriculture. They does nothing because they sit down in the office and they don't know what's going on the ground. And I always believe the budget that Tobago get, which is $2-point-something billion, I thought that was a holistic budget, realizing that the ministers in the government still do their portfolio as an entire country of Trinidad and Tobago.
Yes.
So where they get all this money and they're still complaining, we suffering here real bad, and we need to go forward, Keaton. Look into the matter. I know you're addressing it, and I appreciate it. And again, I compliment your program. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Have a good day. Well, on that note of the Agri-Forum Investment Expo, the Minister of Finance, he said, well, it was a tremendous success. I questioned to myself, what was precisely a success of the Expo? Was it the attendance that you were referring to? Because what thus far has come out of that Expo that you have labeled as a tremendous success? Call on the line with us. Good morning, caller from Tagriqua. Good morning.
You know, there's so much I could say, but I just want to make one comment.
Please do.
That I listened to last night from Fadi Augustine from Tobago. Why they want to reduce the tourist money when they come going to Tobago? You say you want to earn foreign exchange. If the tourists pay $100 to go to Tobago, what you want to solve that for? Why you want to reduce that for? 75 to encourage them to come? That don't make sense. You really want to get foreign exchange? He specified that the people in Tobago and Trinidad supposed to get the reduction to travel between the two islands. The tourists don't mind what money they have to pay. And if we want foreign exchange, why you want to reduce the US? That is what we want in the country. Mr. Shad, I don't know what to say this morning. What you talk about? Can't talk about everything today.
Thank you very much, sir. Have a good day. Have a good day. Yes, there's a lot to talk about indeed. As it relates to Tobago, well, I can promise you that we reached out to the Chief Secretary as well as the Deputy Chief Secretary, Dr. Faith B. Israel, and unfortunately, it seems as though they've forgotten us here at WESN. I'm not entirely sure why, but I hope that we can welcome back them to the program very soon if they're watching. We're waiting for you. Call on the line with us from Digo Martin. Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Shah.
Good morning, sir.
Yes, I just want to say that that budget speech there was like a Michael Holding run-up. very, very long. And when doing thing with Michael Holding, will either deliver a bouncer or you body one of the off somewhere and you can get caught in slips. But when Mr. Amber delivered his delivery, he bowled a googly. Actually, he bowled everybody. So the point about it is, when I started to listen, I listened to budgets over the years. I was so fed up after he went back at 2010 and coming up the road with all sorts of things that he said from 2015. I took it off and I said, look, if you're going to come back on about 3 o'clock and I will listen. And I did that. So I missed all what he said because I realized you're going to go on and on.
Yes.
I live in hope that whatever he says he's going to do, he's going to do it. The problem with them is implementation.
Yes.
And my opinion is that they're going to just say all these things, and then all the money that they allocate is going to come back to the government, and they use that money and come back and help pay off bills and say, yes, we brought down this and we brought down the GDP and this and that. And that has been going on since 2015. If people don't realize it, that's what they have been doing. It's not no investment and making money. They apparently don't know how to make investments. So I don't like to be critical of any government, but good grief, man. Come on, you cannot be saying this thing for 7 years or 8 years and getting away with it. But I already live in hope, and I hope that they fulfill their promises. Thank you for taking my call, and you have a good day.
Thank you very much, Caller, for your contribution. You're absolutely right in terms of implementation. I know you don't always like to criticize, but sometimes constructive criticism is necessary. And implementation has been a major issue. That's why the argument of it being a copy and paste budget is very much valid. Simply because they probably just didn't implement everything from last year that, listen, we have no clue what to do next, so let's try and re-implement these things. Well, not re-implement, but implement over the next financial year. We have a caller on the line with us from Shagonas. Good morning, caller.
Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
First of all, I want to totally agree with your caller about Tremark on the Prime Minister's position on agriculture. Apparently, he is unaware of the various government propagation stations and things like that, the soil testing facilities for people, even the road and town and country planning and preventing people from using good agricultural land for building purposes, the import duties on foreign stuff that affect our agriculture and so forth. But mainly we seem to forget what the budget was. Your friend said the budget was difficult. I always maintain it's very simple. What you have to do is follow the procedures. A budget is reviewing the economy, that is each government agency make the annual administrative report. The officers at the Ministry of Finance check it out and make sure everything is above board. Then if this is done, all this nonsense cannot go on. Look at the stupidity with health workers. You're giving out money left, right, and center, and then you're not dealing properly with their demands for proper salaries. When the real reason for that is government's failure to address their revenue collection, which I have mentioned many times. This thing about the revenue authority is a waste. The revenue authority can do nothing that a board of inland revenue can do. And the government have not initiated one. The reason with the revenue is the government make no attempt to collect their revenue. And the Board of Inland Review is a public service agency who will have protection by the Service Commission. This revenue authority won't have time that. So that is not going to deal with the problem. And the government keep on going on to major projects, like this thing in San Fernando Wharf and this highway building up to Tobago to do what? Right? With no feasibility studies showing what is the benefit. And that is the problems that we're not dealing with, unless you have any questions today, or as usual, you wait till I have.
Well, Professor, I think I agree with everything that you said. I will not question this at all. But thank you very much for your contribution.
Thank you, sir.
Have a good one. Caller on the line with us from Tobago. Good morning, caller.
Good morning.
Good morning, sir.
One of the things that people in the country like to do is to feel safe and comfortable. At the moment, teachers, police, fire service, nurses, who feel safe and comfortable?
Yeah.
Nobody. And if you feel safe and comfortable, you will have performance from them. People argue that civil servants don't perform. They're not safe and they're not comfortable. We ain't safe and we ain't comfortable. The only people in the country comfortable is the environment.
Yeah.
And that is the big problem. And then we have what do you call it? Management problems. So
oh, yeah, definitely.
That's one of the biggest problems we have.
Any system.
Management problems.
Yeah. Thank you very much, caller, for your contribution. Caller on the line with us from San Fernando. Good morning, caller. Good morning.
You know, I will, just as everybody's saying, there's too much to unpack, so just one thing I have to comment on.
Sure.
Right now, I listened to that budget presentation. I listened to the Minister of Finance talk about what the cost would be for the 4% that they have offered across the board.
Yes.
So he gave a figure for what it would cost initially and what subsequently would cost every year. And yes, I heard that. What I did not hear is anything about the transformation of the public service. And this is what I mean when I mean transformation. Efficiency. I equate the transformation that they need to do with efficiency. And I heard nothing to deal with efficiency of the public service. And this is where the problem is. You want to reduce public service expenditure, then make it efficient. As the professor says, get the managers to do their jobs and hold the people below accountable.
Caller, last night on this panel, Gregory Booth stated the government cannot deal with the issue of inefficiency because the government is the most inefficient body. They are the problem and the main cause of inefficiency in Trinidad and Tobago. So that.
Well, my comment on that is, well then, we don't need a government. And what we need under the three panels, we put sit down on the tree and make decisions. Because this is not a PNM problem. This is a problem that we have been having, as far as I'm concerned, for the last 40 years.
And I agree with you on that. Yes.
Inefficiency.
Yes. You're absolutely right.
Okay, Peter.
Thank you very much, caller, for your contribution. You're absolutely right in terms of the inefficiency. I think the minister's address for that was digitalization, of which has been, how long now have they been touting that? I think since at least 2015 they've been touting that. They campaigned on that actually. And it's a lot of work to get done, but have we really made any progress? And that is their way of dealing with the inefficiency. That's not the only thing. Caller on the line with us from Digger Martin. Good morning, caller.
Hi guys, thanks. Good morning.
Good morning.
I have minutes, so I'll talk first.
Go ahead.
I don't know if you all have heard of the NASA project called DART, D-A-R-T. It stands for Double Asteroid Redirection Test. It's intended to show that if an asteroid is about to hit Earth, as happens from time to time, forget the dinosaurs, that we'll be able to deflect it, just give it a nudge so that Earth would not be impacted. So there are two asteroids 7 million miles from Earth, Dimorphos and Didymos. They sent up a spacecraft the size of a refrigerator, and it successfully collided last night with Dimorphos and deflected it. Of course, this required technology, planning, execution, blah, blah, blah. The aim, of course, protection and preservation. It took a couple years and I think $100 million. This government has taken 7 years of ignorance, repetition, regurgitation, zero implementation to come up with more acronyms, a $5.8 trillion budget. Stuart Young and Paula Gopi-Spoon are still saying that COVID from 3 years ago showed them the inequity in the system, the need for food security. That is so ludicrous. Farmers are waiting on land tenure 25 to 30 years now. People died. Inefficiency everywhere. The daily litany of woes. I'm going now. And
go ahead.
Stuart Young is still talking about box lunches.
Yes, yeah.
Imbia was talking about state-of-the-art equipment and healthcare yesterday while my friend texted me about ants attacking a baby in an incubator in a public hospital where we do not even have gauze. Gauze people. Okay? Thanks.
Thank you very much, caller. That last incident of which you highlighted only goes to show how they're completely out of touch. Because what you just mentioned there is not uncommon. Within the public health system, it is absolutely terrible. And as much as you can say that we're paying doctors and keeping them on payrolls, many a times these doctors are sending them to private healthcare facilities. One, because you get your results quicker. Two, you get service quicker. And though it costs £1 and £1 and they are benefiting from it, as in the doctors, some of the times public healthcare service doesn't have what the means or the resources to provide best healthcare for the citizens. So listen, I welcome the Minister of Health, Terence Yalsing, to this program because he was the only minister that was not on an actual panel last night. He spoke by himself. I looked at it. You know why? Because he can't debate anybody. He doesn't have that ability to debate anybody. So I welcome him to this platform. Let's have a conversation about the public healthcare system. Anytime you're ready, sir. But generally across the board, I welcome the Minister of National Security, Fitzgerald Hines. Let's have those conversations. You shouldn't be afraid if you are absolutely confident and you're absolutely faithful and you have that assurance for the public that everything we're doing is for the best and heading in the right direction. No problem with that at all, ladies and gentlemen. Anyway, the phone line is closed. Let's take a quick break here on the program. And when we return, we'll wrap things up for this edition of Talking Points. We'll be right back after this.
Every word, every line, every paragraph depicts a real moment in someone's life. A father, a sister, a mother, a brother. We at Newsday are dedicated to you, the people, and through independent, unwavering journalism, strive to always bring your stories to life. Because your stories are more than just words. Newsday, independent and credible.
The issue, the continued rise in the price of flour and its impact on the cost of living in Trinidad and Tobago. How should we go about it? I want to ask you what has been revealed to you about the state of vulnerability in the country because of this exercise and because of what we're going through. Is the government losing the war on the vaccine front?
The discussion should revolve around the common good for the greatest number of people in Trinidad and Tobago.
How do we inculcate a sense of respect and regard for people who may not be of your own political ilk or persuasion?
The communities are now being used by political opportunists. So
when the tables are turned, it's the same way. Okay, this has been 10 Questions. I'm Andy Johnson, and we'll see you next time.
So, Simone, in these times, things are very difficult. Life has changed dramatically.
Many people have experienced mental health issues for the first time. So people who have just managed to keep anxiety at bay are experiencing a lot of anxiety now.
I am talking with another one of the major pillars of the women's senior national team. Her name is Ria Belgrave. She's actually center defense. Ria is now part again of the CONCACAF preparation for the World Cup 2023.
What's up, Doc? Tuesdays and Thursdays here on WESN, Content Capital.
Well, as we conclude for this edition of the program, thank you very much to all our callers for their contribution this morning. Everybody's opinion was welcomed, and to the caller from Point 14 who started the conversation, I think you made a very good point, and I totally appreciate it. But where do I look for that field of gold? Where do I look for that those rose petals? The silver lining in all this. That is what I am searching for, sir. Now, the good news in relation to GATE, in those who take part in a pre-tertiary education program such as N1, can now get GATE funding for a second program such as a bachelor's degree. That's all well and good, and I'm glad we're focusing on education, but just remember, in itself, see through that. At the end of the day, even if you get that bachelor's degree, when you walk out of university, you're not guaranteed to get a job. You're not guaranteed at all to get a job. So then what do you do with that degree? How useful is that degree in the end? Those are things that we have to bear in mind. For example, you can't be creating jobs by splitting HCC into 3 companies, saying that nobody's going to be retrenched. You guarantee that nobody's going to be retrenched. However, 3 companies is going to make the HCC run more efficiently. You can't just keep creating jobs by doing things like that. Even with WASA, though there's so many individuals being retrenched, if WASA is split up into 5 companies, oh boy, what is that going to do again? It needs to be split up into 5 companies, don't get me wrong. But are we just creating more jobs where they should not be? Bear all those things in mind, ladies and gentlemen. There's a lot to analyze and a lot to get into, of which we will continue tomorrow morning on Talking Points. But for now, I want to thank my co-host, Sean, for covering the first half of the program. I want to thank our guest. And I'd like to thank the entire staff and crew here at WESN who made last night's budget panel what it was. It was a success. We thoroughly enjoyed the conversation and the healthy debates that we saw from all participants. And we thank you, the viewers, for continuing to support us. For now, this is where I end it. I'm Keaton Shaw. Remember, as ironic as it may be, today is a good day to have a good day. Unless you have to fill up your tank, which I have to, by the way. Anyway, we'll see you again tomorrow morning. Bye-bye.